Good evening, everyone. My name is Sarah. I'm a cosmologist working in London, and welcome to part 2 of my playthrough of Surviving Mars with shitty science commentary. So last time I started a playthrough on the hardest difficulty, which it turns out so I had done a playthrough on easy before, which was quite easy indeed. But the main difference I've spotted was how slow. Okay, I'm gonna. Good evening, everyone. My name is Sarah. I am a cosmologist working in London, and in my spare time, I play quite a lot of video games. So, welcome to my second part of a playthrough of Surviving Mars, which is a Mars simulator of what it might be like when we actually start colonizing Mars in the style of SimCity. So I started last time a playthrough on the hardest difficulty. The main defining feature of the hardest setting seems to be how slow everything is progressing. So let's see how my colonization of Mars is going. Alright, so this is where we're at, so let's pause this for a second. So, right. I was in the process of refueling this rocket extremely slowly because in this difficulty I could only bring from Earth one fuel refinery, so which sort of by magic turns water and electricity into power. So I think this rocket was about to launch. As soon as it reaches 100%, I will send it on its way. Because also in the hardest difficulty you only have one rocket, so I'm playing as an independent company who only could muster enough money for one of these things. That's the main difference with easy mode, in which you have basically just a lot more money, so you can buy more rockets, you can bring more of these, all of these constructed parts from Earth with you. It makes it a lot easier. So one thing I was thinking about is how much you actually would need to bring from Earth with you if you were going to Mars, and that's alright. The rocket is now ready to go. And
milestone achieved.
Let's set off. Yay! Right, now in the meantime, this rocket has gone to bring more maintenance parts for us. That seems to be the main limiting factor at the moment, is not having enough of these resources that are used to maintain our infrastructure over here. So I've already stockpiled a bit of water and a bit of oxygen for when the colonists eventually arrive. And I was building this dome, which to finish I need this resource, which is called very cryptically polymers. And the only other things that polymers are used for is to repair and maintain these things. Alright, so now my drones have stopped working because they don't have a control center. So I'm going to bring this guy over, because that should be able to remotely control drones, and it has its own drones. But right, so as you can see, I've let a lot of these things fall into disarray and not being repaired, because you need these rare resources that you cannot get on Mars directly. So there are three types of things you cannot get on Mars easily in this game. I think they all kind of make sense. I think they stand for umbrella things of things that you really cannot procure once you get on Mars. So I think the easiest one to understand, I think, is electronics. Of course, if you arrive on Mars, even assuming you can find enough concrete and generically called metals to start to build things out of, that's not going to make for you a solar panel. For example, a solar panel, or even more simply a wire that is connecting your solar panel to the things you want to power, is super difficult to make. Right? So you cannot make a solar panel just out of concrete and metal. So at the very least, you're going to need some sort of electronic board to tell the solar panel you know, when to deploy and when to shut down, because these seem to do it automatically. So when the sun comes up, the solar panels unfold, and then at the end they, at the end of the day, they fold back to avoid becoming dirtier. But you're gonna need some sort of electronic board for that, right? So it's the simplest forms of circuitry, and you cannot make these without things like a lab. Okay, even on Earth, it's very difficult to make circuit boards, right? You have to be very careful to isolate it from dust, and you still need humans to do it. It's not a completely automated process. Even though in this game, these little drones seem to be doing a ton of things. It's very unlikely that they could manufacture circuit boards from scratch, just out of metals found literally in the ground. So if you want things like transistors and capacitors, all these kind of maintenance parts that you are going to need to build and maintain structures like factories, for example, you're not going to be able to make these on site for a very long time, I think. Alright, so what is going on? Our rocket is 50% of the way to Earth. I am not doing anything at the moment, so this is producing more fuel. That's good. So my plan for now is to just let this rocket arrive on Earth, resupply with these rare resources and bring them back so I can finish building the dome. And then as soon as it gets here, hopefully I'll have enough fuel already to send it back the last time to bring actual inhabitants for our dome over here. And if I want to reach this other water, I'll probably need another drone control center too. At the moment I'm just making fuel. So I'm gonna check the, let's check the fuel production and electricity. So I am making more than I need to be. I can probably shut some of these down, because the only thing I'm really concerned with right now is fuel production. So that's not, it's not going to be crucial. I would like to have more water so I can store some for later, but I don't think I'm going to be able to do that. Right, so let's just wait for the rocket to get to Earth. Alright, so yeah, so the part of not having electronics made on site completely makes sense, right? If you were really trying to build a whole circuit grid with all the delicacies that entails, like transforming voltage between batteries, storing and emitting. 'Cause in this game, as long as you have enough resources, you can just build as many batteries as you want, right? Of course, in real life, you cannot build batteries just by concrete and metals.
Select the sector to scan.
Okay. So I found another mystery. Let's see what we're gonna get this time. And it looks like our rocket has arrived on Earth. Maybe. Has it? Yes. Alright, so what should we take? So these polymers, machine parts and electronics are the ones that are really crucial, that we cannot possibly finish without. Because we're not going to be able to make polymers, I think, until we develop a polymer factory. And machine parts and electronics require humans. So we are going to be quite stuck. So in polymers we needed at least... How many did we need? To finish this we need about 10. And each of these batteries require 1. So that should be the biggest priority. Alright, now quality of life improvements. I would like another moisture vaporizer for more water. I would like so I don't know if the polymer factory actually requires humans. Maybe it does, maybe not. These are expensive and super heavy. So probably not a priority. But I could get another drone hub just to accelerate things a bit. this seems okay. So let's add a bit more, just to be sure. All right. So now our rocket is on the way back. This is going to explore. It's all going well, right? Right, and there's another problem with just having metals and concrete to start with. Is that that cables and any sort of building, which this game just lets you build like as many cables as you want, as many batteries as you want. But it's not so easy to make a cable powerful enough to power a whole of these big domes like this, right? So if you think about how cables actually work, they have a range of metals in them. So I think the most common ones are copper wires. Of course, if you just find a bunch of metals just lying around on the floor, or even in a mine underground, it's not going to be only copper. It's going to be quite a lot of work.
Discovered.
It's going to be quite a lot of work to turn that copper, turn that generic metal into copper. Non-medical service buildings. Blah 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 blah. Require workers and operate at 100 performance. Oh. Well, that's good. That will be useful in the future. Alright, then we're gonna run into the problem pretty soon, and we're gonna run out of money too. So as soon as the colonists get here, they better start producing valuable things, right? And that's not gonna be easy, because on this particular landing site there are no rare metals to exploit. There's one over here, which is really far from the dome, but you know, you also need water. It's a bit random. And that's another aspect of this game which scales with price, because in the version when you're rich, you can actually scan this entire sector a lot better at the start of the game. So when you land, you have these orbital probes that give you a lot of visibility. And then if I had known where the resources were, I would have probably landed in a better spot, like over here, where you have expensive metals and water, and it's all a lot easier. But hey. Right. So you want to make cables, right? And apparently you want to make a shit ton of cables, because in the SimCity-like approach we have here, you have the power production on one side, you have the resources extraction on another side, probably concrete, where the concrete is, and the habitation side are all separate, right? So we've divided it into different sectors. And that's just by virtue of how the dome works. So the dome is so big, it doesn't make sense to surround it with stuff. It needs resources from only one location. So if you want to connect all these different parts with wires, you're gonna have a hard time. So you find some metals. If you want to extract the copper, assuming that there is even any copper, so you're gonna need to smelt your metal. You're gonna need to have some sort of portable little forge, which I assume each of these drones has a little tiny forge inside of them, and then they can heat the metal to exactly the correct boiling point, and then separate the metals, purify the metals. Then you have to oxidize it to make it purer, so they have to have a basic oxygen extraction. I mean, on Earth, extracting pure enough copper from metals, like the ones you have in copper wires, is done in dedicated factories. Right? It's a hard process to make the copper pure enough to transmit electricity without losing a ton of it. So I've completely glossed over that here. It's just generic metal. So I guess we have all types of metal ever. And this drone has died of dust. Now we can only salvage it. Okay, I didn't know that drones could die of dust. Oh, it's because it was standing next to the rocket. Oh, his friend helped him! Oh, that's so sweet, they're different colors. Aww, that's adorable. Okay, so now we're just gonna get the polymers and stuff out, and we're gonna finish building this, I assume. And then I can build a big tube from the water and air to the dome. Another thing that's weird in this game, that the pipes that carry water and oxygen carry both, and in both directions. So that means if you make it all go through one tube and that one tube fails, like everyone is gonna die from no oxygen. Like there is no backup. Then I guess you could build multiple pipes, but you cannot separate air and water. It's just a bit of strange decisions. So because the rocket landed, it kicked up a whole lot of dust, and we need to clean all these things. No, yeah, okay. So let's just finish the construction. So assuming that we can design drones that can also smelt, oxidize, purify metals perfectly, and then they can also build wires just out of metals they have literally picked off the floor. Then yeah, it wouldn't be. Then you would be okay with the kind of metals you find on Mars. So I think no one's really thought about how to build efficient cables that you could just make out of nothing. You certainly cannot have fiber optic. Fiber optic is super difficult to make. And that is far beyond what a tiny independent drone would be capable of, sadly. Alright, and let's add another water vaporizer. Here, maybe, there, I don't know. So this one we just got in parts from Earth. That was easy. Alright, so advanced resources. So yeah, the rare metals extractor requires people. The polymer factory we don't know how to build, because we have launched from Earth before we had the technology to know how to build the polymer factory, which is also an interesting choice. I think one of the morals of this game is, if you go to Mars before you're actually prepared, it's gonna take a while. Yeah, it takes a lot longer to get things going if you don't prepare things in advance properly. But hey, right, that's another design flow I was thinking about. So this installation that we've got going on. Is that all these things are so separated, and especially that the dome where all the people are going to live is only one big dome.
Select a sector to scan.
Because of course, if everyone lives in one dome and that dome fails, you know, you're going to be completely screwed. Plus it has so many different parts, right? It has like all these entries, it has a glass on top, it's enormous, so you have to fill the entire thing with oxygen. And it only has one failure point, which is the dome. So if you have a power cut, or if you have a water shortage, or whatever shortage, and I'm sure we will at some point, because I haven't been playing this particularly competently. Pipe. So if you have a failing, then everyone suffers equally. So I think actually having a big dome like this is exactly the opposite of what NASA is currently planning. Like, it couldn't be more far from what they had in mind. So they had this big design competition for Martian habitats a few years ago. And the most important word is easy to make. The most important word is scalable. So if you have a single dome like this, you're not going to be able to scale it. You have to destroy the whole thing and make it bigger, or build a whole other dome next to it. So not particularly practical. So the things that we're looking at were far smaller. So they would have these tiny huts, and the idea was to make them out of materials that are even easier than whatever this dome is made of. So concrete, in fact, could be enough. In some of the projects that were submitted, concrete was enough. So Martian concrete, not even made by extracting things deeply like this thing is doing, but just from the kind of sand you have on the surface. If you heat that, it will melt enough to make a special type of concrete that we don't have on Earth. But that material is actually malleable enough to make whole habitats out of by just layers. So it would be like a 3D printed like habitat with many layers made of Martian concrete. More like a desert hut than anything. And then the project that actually won was using a material that we're not using here at all. It's actually using Martian ice, because we know that more than deeply buried water like this one, what we have on Mars is a lot of just water in the form of ice. So just underneath the surface, you have a ton of water ice. And of course, you only need to melt it a bit, and it becomes pliable, and you can start making layers and layers and just assembling this structure, which is just like a tiny hut. And then because the material is kind of soft, you can really make sure it's close to the outside enough. What's the word? That it doesn't let oxygen.
We have a water shortage. We have a power.
That it doesn't let the air out. Alright, so now we have a dome. Let's make our dome habitable. A pipe. A pipe will go from here to here to here to here. There we go. And from here to here. And we need some cables. Always need cables. A shit ton of cables. We can it's okay, we can just make cables we can just make cables out of metal. It's easy. You know. Technology that doesn't exist, but no big problem. To be fair, that's not too unrealistic. I bet if NASA was really trying, they'd find a way to do it. Alright, so now the dome has water. Let's turn on the oxygen thing. Let's turn on the oxygen tank. As the oxygen tank is full, but it's not giving anything because it's probably malfunctioned or something. I don't know. So that's okay. How much fuel have we got? Almost halfway. Wonderful.
Select a sector to scan.
And one more cable. We're gonna have power as soon as this drone is finished building it. So all the power for this enormous dome, right, which is gonna have buildings and stuff, and it's gonna be like system critical, is all going through this tiny fucking shitty wire over here, right? And all through the same wire. So if there's a problem here, it's gonna be the same. I guess that's also my design fault, because I could just bring it from here to there. And, whatever. I don't want to do that. I could waste more resources to make extra pipes and stuff. No, but the main problem is really in the design of the dome. I'm just shutting it off for now because we're only trying to refuel this rocket again so we can send it to Earth and get people over. That's the most important thing. Next, the rocket refueling, very, very slow. Right, I don't have another fuel. Oh shit, I should have brought another fuel refinery. Oh, I'm a fucking idiot. At least we have lots of these parts. That's gonna be okay. It's just slow. Slow and safe. Right. So the main problem is in the design of this dome, really. Because if everyone lived in the same place, they all die at the same time. It's like what you see in Mars disaster movies, you know what I mean? Like it makes for a more interesting disaster movie if everyone relies on one critical thing failing, and they fix it at the last minute. It's all very exciting. But in reality, we probably live in tiny little huts. I think in this version of mass colonization, we're really trying to prioritize comfort, so everything has to be ready by the time they get here. And they're gonna have like hobbies, they're gonna have like morale we have to care about, they're gonna live in this beautiful city with parks and whatever the shit we want to put in it. And it's a good point, I should put shit in it. Right, so we're maximizing their comfort, so we're establishing a long-term colony that people are excited to join, I guess. I think in reality that would not be a problem. There would be more than enough people excited about living on fucking Mars. So in reality, I think we would maximize reliability and fixability. So building things only from local materials, avoiding structures that rely on rare resources as much as possible. Things like batteries would be very hard to make. So in reality, I'm not sure we even would for a while. I think you would just have tiny huts, each with its own solar panel, each with a small capacitors. Because then if your unit of, I think the NASA plan was 2 or 3 people. If your unit of 2 or 3 people fails, you can just go to your neighbors. And it's not going to be a complete disaster from the get-go. That's a lot more reliable. And then if you want to add buildings like a science lab or a school or whatever, you can always put them in other huts, right? So if you have a hut about the size of each of these buildings that we're currently building, instead of having them all in a big dome, even though it's a lot more comfortable because you don't have to wear a helmet every time you go outside. In reality, you would just wear a helmet every time you go outside. And I don't think that the kind of people who want to be pioneers on Mars would care enough about having to wear helmets outside, you know. I think especially the first generation is very unlikely in my mind that they would actually complain about that. They just want to live there, right? So they'll have their tiny hut, not super comfortable, not super like beautiful and like design like this. Probably not. Probably one hut dedicated to science, one hut dedicated to clinic, whatever. And each with their own tiny oxygen extractor and maybe their own tiny moisture vaporizer. Because those are easier to ship from Earth as well, right? Instead of shipping one tiny, like one enormous moisture vaporizer like this, I could just split it into multiple. It doesn't need to be so separate. I think the philosophy is to really produce and consume really close to each other. Right, so one thing I am worrying about is the power consumption. Why is this taking so long? Ah. So if I turn the dome on, the power grid is not producing enough to cope with demand, even though there's a lot of stored power. Okay, that's not great. That's not great. You see, I keep having to refurbish these wind turbines and stuff with the rare parts I brought from Earth. That's not great. That's where all the maintenance goes. And I think the way this colony is gonna fail, if I can predict it, make a wild guess, that after my people arrive, they're gonna be fine, but they're not gonna make any money. So my funding's gonna run out. I don't think. I think there's a thing in the research tree
Sector scanned. Select a sector
that allows you to just make money. Make money from like social outreach and stuff. Yeah, okay. So a live feed from Mars will provide funding for our colony. Wonderful. No, not even. That's just going to increase the number of applicants. I've already done the Mars crowdfunding. Right, so how the hell am I going to make money? That's terrible. So that's definitely gonna be the main problem, like for sure. That they're gonna need these parts to maintain the ridiculous houses that they've built for themselves. And there's not gonna be any parts, because I'm not gonna have enough people to make polymers and machine parts in the first generation, even if I manage to build these factories, which I can't, because I don't have the technology to build these factories. And even if I could, they'd produce them too slowly for their own maintenance. And even if... and the money will just run out, right? Because I have to bring these things from Earth. And they just run out of resources. It'll be quite shitty. Right, so what would they like? What would they like? Research lab is good. Spacebar. Yeah, I played this on easy, and even on easy, these people were so ridiculously picky. It made no sense. How about... infirmary would be good. Diner would be better, because they always complain about not having good food. See, they complain about all this ridiculous bullshit. Like, I'm not sure they would. And then you have to you'll see when we get to this people selection screen. Like, they all have their hobbies and things they want to do, and blah. They're just quite shitty. But they need a place to work. So let's see if I can build polymer factory. I can't build any of these factories. Any of these mission critical factories rely entirely on prefab. That's awful. I guess I should have researched those first. Can I? Are those even a thing I can research at the start in hard mode? No, it's not. Like, none of these things I can even research at the moment. So I've just started a colony on Mars with none of the technology that would actually make it work. Yeah, no, I mean, they're gonna be fucked, for sure. For sure. It's not gonna be great. Even if they do arrive here, they won't have anything to do, so they'll just live, I guess. That's good. Right, they need some sort of food production, of course. They have to eat stuff. How do they eat stuff? Like, what produces food? Do any of these make food? I don't need a lake. I don't need a stone garden. I need a fucking farm or something. Ah, there we go. Hydroponic farm. Super expensive to build. That's good. That's the only thing I can do. There's a generic farm that I haven't researched yet, of course. Let's make a farm right here. And because I know that they're gonna bitch about it, I'm also gonna build them a restaurant. Right here. I'm not sure what kind of people I'm gonna pick. Alright. So finally, it's a candidate selection. Haha. No. Why did that pop up? I was so excited. Oh my god. Where is my rocket? Where's my rocket at? Available rockets 0. Oh, it's still here. Oh, bullshit. Oh, I was really excited. Alright, yeah. So, this particular design of one enormous dome. Terrible idea. Like, it's asking for disaster. Like, you have one entry point of oxygen failing, everything goes down. Like, your food resource is ruined, it's not in a separate building, where maybe it requires less oxygen and less temperature. No, none of that. All the temperature is the same everywhere, so you waste an enormous amount of electricity. It's made of glass, for fuck's sake. Like, how is glass resistant to like meteorites and the kind of shit we've seen so far? Like, it's not. Like it's a terrible design, but it's super difficult to make. Like how could you possibly build an enormous dome like this with these tiny drones? Like how are they manufacturing this enormous thing of enormous piece of glass?
Cable
Nah.
fault reported.
This is just not how you would do it. I think NASA knows this, 'cause that's not what NASA is planning to do either. I'm just letting my buildings get as damaged as possible before I repair them. Because ultimately that is gonna be the downfall of this colony. For sure. There's a lack of money. But like, I don't think you would actually like have a shortage of either applicants or funding for a thing like this. I think once the people arrive here, once it's successful, we're gonna have, you know, just enough funding to make a rocket take off every 6 months or so. Like it only takes, I don't know, like one country to do it, or you could even crowdfund it on the internet, right? 'Cause this company that we're playing as only has one rocket, so okay, they've got it, it's theirs. The only money they need is the money to launch it and bring it back and forth. I can't imagine that would actually be that much. I mean, it's quite a lot. But say if the people on here all had live feeds of their life, or whatever, I'm sure they would have enough following to just fund it themselves. I don't think it would be such a big problem. But in this difficulty, that is gonna be the problem in the end. No funding to keep bringing these rare parts that we need. So I already talked about how electronics is very reasonable that we cannot make on Mars, at least for a long time, until we actually get factories going, because even on Earth is the kind of thing that you require actual humans to make. Machine parts are kind of the same. Although that's a bit more realistic. That you could probably make some machine parts, probably just enough to maintain, although... And obviously these drones are capable of taking these metals, melting them, putting them into the correct shape, changing, separating different types of metals, oxidizing them, and all these ridiculously difficult things that go into making batteries. Now making a battery from scratch, do you have any idea how hard that is? Or even a solar cell? And if you went in the middle of the desert and I told you now make a solar cell out of just metal you found on the ground, like no, it's hopeless, right? These drones are ridiculously capable, I mean, unrealistically capable. And given that they could make cables and batteries, I think for internal consistency, they should be able to make machine parts. Those should be able to be made by the drones. I think that's a bit of an oversight in the game. I'm not particularly convinced. And the last one is the very cryptically named polymers. I'm not exactly sure what that's meant to represent, because there's definitely lots of materials on Earth that we use in factories that we cannot make on Mars, like rubber for the tires. But I guess you could make rubbers out of metal if you just had suspensions good enough. I'm not exactly sure why we need a generic thing called polymers. I thought about it a bit, but organic materials are useful on Earth, but they're not exactly. It's not really something we cannot live without, you know. So if we look around for what requires polymers for maintenance, it's only very specific things. So what does? Like batteries. I don't really get that. Maybe that's saying that they've given up on refining the metals that they find enough to the point of making batteries. So making a battery is pretty difficult. So maybe they're bringing some sort of, you know, like in lithium polymer batteries, you have lithium and polymers, as the name indicates. So maybe they're able to extract the lithium from Mars itself, but they're gone with LiPo batteries, and then they have to bring the polymer part. That's possible. Although I think they could just have made a better choice then. Of a battery other than LiPo. I don't know. It sounds like it should be possible. Especially given they have solar panels. Which require much more specific, far more specific and refined compounds than a battery does. So I think there's a bit of overlap on what these resources that we need to bring from Earth are. They're not completely distinct, and they don't all make sense. Alright, the rocket is almost ready to go. Finally. God, that was a long time coming. Yeah, I'm just gonna let my my things get as broken as possible before I actually spend the resources on them, because when you repair them it goes all the way down to 0, and that's really what we're trying to save here. Just to make these people live as long as possible. We're gonna need to bring as many of these rare resources from Earth as possible before the funding runs out, you know. I think in the first round we're gonna get 12 people, so maybe we can get 3 factories, one for each of these, and just have the people work in factories. They're not gonna be happy. And I see here. Alright, so my farm is ready, but I can turn these off. Right, there's gonna be a problem with power as well. What's the problem? The problem with power is that we are producing not enough during the night. What did I say? Power shortage. Bullshit. Not power. Oh, it's because I turned these things off. Alright, so if we turn everything on, like pretending that the people have arrived, and they're using all this stuff, now suddenly we're not producing enough power anymore. So I should probably... Alright, let's spend some of these. It hurts my heart. I'm gonna regret this when people are dying because I spent those precious fucking polymers. But we can save some power ahead of them arriving. I think in many ways these wind turbines are a lot better. I don't know. Do they just produce more? No, they produce the same. But they use a much more common parts, because machine parts are also used for all these other buildings. So if I just abandoned, no, those just require metals too. This is a dilemma, right? Because if I build these, then I can abandon having batteries, and I don't need to import polymers anymore. And if I only build these, they're easier to maintain. So I'm not spending any of these resources. But seeing as I need so many batteries, if I need solar panels, I think I'm going to build more wind turbines. At least one more. I think that makes more sense. Just made out of concrete, you know, concrete and machine parts. You don't need like what you actually need in real life to make a wind turbine, which is metal. I'm complaining too much. This game is mostly realistic. I think the general feel of balance is what we get from Earth, and how hard it is to get more, and how far ahead you need to plan. I think that's pretty well done. I think unfortunately that's well done.
Research complete. Anomaly analyzed.
All right. Service bots. That is good. That means I won't have to assign people to things like the canteen, because I'm going to develop AIs good enough to just make them run perfectly all the time. And people are not going to complain that the canteen is closed constantly. Buildings require maintenance less often. Holy shit. Yeah, okay, that's good too. If I had money, I could boost my science artificially much. Very realistic. You just fund science more, you get more science done. Completely proportional how much effort you're putting in. Alright, and the rocket is ready to go. taking off. And the next time it arrives here, we will have people. And they will live in these way too fancy buildings that are not practical in any way. Seriously, like, why would pioneers not be happy with just being on Mars? Like, you're on fucking Mars. You don't need like trees and stuff. Right? You just need a tiny food production thing. And a tiny like concrete thing to sleep on the floor with some oxygen, you know, it's not that bad.
Sector scanned. Anomaly found. Select a sector to scan.
Uh-huh. So I have some anomalies over there. So I have to send my Explorer RV to. But it's on top of this enormous ridge. I don't think it can climb an enormous ridge. I'm gonna try. Can it actually climb that? Can it actually go like vertical? That's crazy. Let's see. Whee! He's just stopped. Okay, that doesn't surprise me for some reason. And there is literally no way to go around. Why did I choose such a shitty sector? I didn't get to see this map before I picked it. God, that's so sad. That's so hopelessly sad. So I guess that science will never be explored then. I'm gonna refuel it. I'm gonna try to send it like over here, maybe. Yeah, it's not a mecho. It cannot climb vertical mountains. Like, it's nothing. So how are preparations going? I have got plenty of stored oxygen. Actually, I've got so much stored oxygen that I can turn off my production for a while. I've got not a lot of stored water. Right. It's all fine. Don't know why this is flashing. Don't flash. Alright, so the concrete plant has finished all the concrete in this part of okay, it looks like it's why has it stopped? There's still some concrete here. Concrete! Look, it's available. It says over here. What's wrong? Warning, no deposits. Bullshit. I can tell. Okay, so there's no more concrete. Shit. And the drones can only travel this far. Right, so the drones all go through a central AI, because when I assign tasks to them, they all have a priority. All the tasks get automatically assigned priority, and it's kind of a stupid system. But they cannot go further away from this, otherwise they don't have any independent AI, so I couldn't tell them, go build something over there. That's not gonna work. But I only need to move this to here while I build it. I think once it's operating... no, it's kind of shit. Okay, I guess I'm gonna move it anyway. I need to build a second concrete plant. How much concrete have I got? Actually, I've got quite a lot. I don't need to worry too much about it. Still, though. Concrete extractor. There we go. So I'm hoping they'll be able to build it. So now it's arrived here. It's going to release all the drones, and they can attempt to build this. For which they need metals and machine parts, and the machine parts are all the way in storage over here. So yeah, no. God, this drone AI system doesn't make any sense. Oh, I can command them by hand. Okay. I'll do it by hand then. Drone? Drone? Where are you? Where are my drones? I don't see them. This guy. Right, I'm gonna go pick up machine parts and bring them. Okay, and the rocket is almost on Earth. Everything is fine. Everything is fine. My people are not gonna die immediately. They're gonna die soon. They can't die before they arrive. They should enjoy being alive while they can. Absolutely. And I can scrap this thing. Pop. Okay. And the last thing I need is fucking cables. So let's go. Let's go cables. I think these drones can use these resources to make them. They should be okay. And they're even scrapping this one. Yeah, so that's all going fine. Everything is fine. There is no death if there's no people here. No one is starving if they're still on Earth. High success. And let's have a concrete depot kinda here. There we go. And now I can bring my drones back to where they are useful. This size is about that size. Here. That should be okay. And I think... Oh, there's meteorites. This is all very spooky. So this can operate on its own. It's just that when it produces concrete, it will store it inside itself. Because it's too far from the drone. Fucking hell. I need about... Like, I think if I had double the amount of funding I had to build stuff, or even like an extra few millions, this could work properly. I guess when we actually do this, we'll have proper battle plans of what is going to be built first and when, and we'll actually have maps of the surface. It's not going to be all so rushed. Now, this is kind of reassuring that even if it was rushed, it would probably still work. Hopefully, maybe. Alright. Passenger selection. This is the most fun part. Right, so I have to pick 12 people from 71 applicants. And in true Dwarf Fortress style, I am very tempted to go read every single one of their profiles and like change their names and like plan what families I'm gonna make. That's gonna take way too long. I know what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna read all their bios as much as possible. Flows. Yes, I would like to bring the idiot. Someone has a trait which is idiot. Can cause a malfunction in the workplace, 10% chance. Why did you even apply? How did you get past the first application round? Tourist. Tourist is good. Gambling. Maybe gambling is a way to make money. Maybe if I bring enough tourists, I can turn my colony into a gambling den, because I have four gambler tourists. That's worth a go. Celebrity. Oh, wonderful. Generates funding. Ah, yes. I like these guys. Well, anyway, I think what I'm gonna do is read all of these bios. I'm gonna find the most interesting ones and assemble my team of 12. Team of 12 people who will die horribly, probably of oxygen deprivation and freezing to death. That's quite exciting. And I'll be back in the next video I'll show you guys what which colonists I've managed to find. I guess it's good if they all have the same trait, like gambling, because I can only build like one building and they'll all be happy with it if it fits all of their hobbies. So if I pick only gamblers, and then I can just build a casino. Yes, I have to play this in the most greedy way possible, right? I'm gonna take the most qualified people or whatever. I'm gonna take the rich celebrities who generate income, even if they're idiots. I mean, that is how desperate the situation is gonna be. We have not enough resources. This is gonna be fun. Alright. So, until next time, bye!